morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank Mark Klumpine and United Potato Growers for the opportunity for 4GROUP and myself to continue our initiative on the second season, which we consider the storage season. 2 years ago, I was up here and I made my first presentation on the storage season and the second season and what it is. Last year, I made the analogy that potato season starts way before the year you're growing it. It starts with the seed, the planting, and everything. I made the analogy or the parallel to North American football, the planning, the drafting, preseason, the regular season, and the playoffs, which is the storage season. This year, we're going to take a little bit different direction, and 4GROUP and myself are going to give our time to the NAPSO organization, and I'm excited to see what they have for their presentation this year to educate us further about the storage season. But before that, any of our team will be available here at the expo, and we'd be happy to talk to you, any of our staff, about how we can help you with your second season. And with that, I'd like to welcome Victoria and Todd with NAPSO back to the stage.
Thanks again.
I'll hand you control, Todd.
We'll see if I can run it.
Yeah, so Victoria Stamper from United Potato Growers of Canada, but also part of the North American Potato Storage Association Central Committee. So Todd's going to do most of the talking. You've heard enough from me, but we're going to go through a little bit about the AIM Act and the impact on potato storage.
Right, so just first of all, thanks so much, Steve, for the opportunity to be up here on behalf of NAPSO, North American Potato Storage Organization, group of growers, companies that are involved in the second season, as you put it, Steve, where we're taking that post-harvest, taking that crop and making sure it gets out into the usage channels that it's going to go to. So first of all, we're going to talk about some legislation that was passed back in 2020. So this was back in the first round of the previous administration, before the previous one. So right, this is Trump's first term that the AIM Act was actually passed. And what that means for North American potato storage owners. So first of all, it has to do with some national or international treaties that have been passed, and it all goes around the HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, and those are synthetic gases that are used in refrigeration processes. So those of us who are in the potato industry who have refrigeration on our farms or in our businesses, we have all had an opportunity now to be impacted by this act, okay? And the act started, like I said, back in 2020, but on January 1st of 2026, we had a major hurdle. And that's really what we're here to start talking about. The transition of what are called A1 refrigerants into some more environmentally friendly refrigerants, A2Ls, and moving into other refrigerants going forward. This is going to impact each of our businesses. So the U.S. law passed the AIM Act. It's the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act, and it has to do with our ability to do the job of cooling our potatoes and potato products with more environmentally friendly refrigerants. In Canada, it's the ODSHAR, so that's an existing framework, and they just fit the amendment, the Kigali Amendment, into there's some changes in the rules, okay? They're not changes in the rules that are necessarily positive or negative, they're changes, and we have to navigate change, right? When the wind changes, you change the sail, right? We've got a job, we've got a cool crop. To cool that crop, we've got products at our disposal. Those products are changing. So our role is to really help, as NAPSO, is to help the stakeholders and those of us in the room that are a part of this system to set the sails properly and make sure that we're going to follow these new rules and try and keep the profit high and the cost down in the face of those changes. A little bit of a background, again, this is all part of what was originally the Montreal Protocol, and then the Kigali Amendment, which was actually ratified and agreed upon by both Canada and the United States. So we're going to follow this, and it has to do with our ability to reduce the use of HFCs in the cooling of our products in all of North America, okay, and around the world, because this Kigali Amendment and the Montreal Protocol all have to do with the world's address to global climate change. So we have committed to a reduction of HFC use of 85%, so cut use by 85, not to 85, but by 85% by 2036. Now, in 2020, 2036 looked like it was a long ways away, right? But I think it's 2026, and that's 10 years, and I can tell you in my career that 10 years is not very much time, okay? So in 10 years' time, there's going to be a quite dramatic shift in the way we refrigerate storages. Now, we don't have to make immediate changes, and this presentation is really more of an appetizer than it is the meal, okay? The real meal is Thursday. If you're interested in this, you'll want to come to that. We'll have a QR code at the end to talk about that. So first and foremost, some of the things that the AIM impact are the way they're going to impact us here in the United States, so south of the border. Leak monitoring and refrigerant loss is mandated. Now, I'm just going to do a show of hands. How many people are operating refrigerated potato storage in this room? That's a pretty large show of hands. Has anyone ever been involved in a refrigeration system losing its charge? So they had to pay some refrigeration contractor like us this huge amount of money because some valves stayed open that shouldn't have. Has anybody had a loss of charge in refrigerant? Everybody that put their hand up the first time should have put their hand up the second time because it stinks, but that's kind of the way things are. The reason the AIM Act is called Innovation in Manufacturing is we're trying to get better at making sure we don't lose charge. Okay, and so we have to do a better job of tracking that if we're going to do that. So our monitoring of leak detection and the amount of times we're charging a refrigeration system, the amount of charge, percentage of charge that we have to put in, that's going to had to be kept track of a lot better. Okay, so it's important for us to monitor and record. We've got to be prepared to make these reports when and if they're asked for. Now, some might say, well, who's the AIM cop? Who's the guy who's going to show up in my place and write me that AIM ticket for going too fast, right? The speeding ticket. Well, there are two agencies that work that angle. And again, these details are going to be much better fleshed out on Thursday than they will here. But one of them is the Environmental Protection Agency, not as bad. The other one is Department of Energy. Department of Energy has teeth. If they show up, bad things can happen. So it's important for us to remember that the people that play in this are all responsible. So all of these rules apply and go back into, for example, in DOE, Department of Energy's potential place of where they're going to issue the ticket have to do with the person who supplied the refrigerant, that'd be the person that we bought from us as a mechanical contractor, and the owner of the equipment, all three equally sharing the burden. So any fine is going to go to all three parties. Upgrades and facilities, there's things we need to look at. And again, so it's just important to know that any new equipment that's bought from 26 and on is going to be using the new refrigerants. It's not going to be using the old refrigerants. As you replace equipment, you'll go forward with replacements with new refrigerants. Now, the act in Canada is, I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Sure. Yeah, so ODCHAR, as we call it in Canada, it's really built into the existing Environmental Protection Act. So it has been there since 2019, maybe even 2018. Our plans in Canada with regard to the reduction of HFCs. We have sort of the same step-down process, phase-down process, if you want to say it, on refrigerants as in the US with the AIM Act. The biggest difference right now is we don't have that hard stop January 1st, 2026 with regard to manufacture and distribution of refrigerants. But it most certainly is there. It controls the entry and exit of HFCs through licensing and encourages the recovery and recycling. And I think that's a big part of it as well in terms of the recycling of the refrigerants and the availability of that moving forward. And also, we're going to talk a little bit on Thursday, the impact on cost of refrigerants moving forward. But definitely is on the Canadian agenda as well.
All right, so similarities between the two. Kigali Amendment sets us at the 85% reduction by 2036. So that's an international goal, and everyone who signed on is set up for that same international goal. Again, enforcement, permit allocation systems. So they're going to regulate usage through the way permitting is done, and also by monitoring sales of refrigerant. And the refrigerants, the reduction in HFCs, doesn't mean that you can't use your current system. Okay, your current system is totally viable. You don't have to make a change in your current system. It's just as you service that piece of equipment, we need to have better records of the service on that piece of equipment. So it's really critical. And innovation, again, is important in both of these. The innovation is what we're really shooting for, being more efficient at what we do. And there's really not a problem in trying to increase our efficiency, right? That's something we should all really kind of strive for. What are some key differences? Well, the AIM Act is new legislation, and ODSHAR, is that how you say it?
ODSHAR,
Hey,
sure.
ODSHAR, why not, right? That already exists in Canada, so it's just been modified and folded into that Canadian framework. The U.S. AIM Act really focuses on economic competitiveness, and Canada focuses on environmental stewardship. Okay, and so it's important for us to remember that. In the U.S., it's very important to note that this is applied state by state. So some states have a higher standard than other states do. And actually, those of you in potato producing regions, there are some states in potato producing regions that are much more restrictive, and others that are following a more delayed timeline. So you need to know state by state where you're going with that. In Canada, this is a federal issue. So it's across all provinces, and it's applied federally versus state by state.
If I can just jump in, NAPSO has created sort of a standard template letter to be able to reach out to your state legislators to make sure, hey, let's keep this consistent with federal rather than changing it state by state by state. So we are willing to support you on that.
Okay, so what does it mean for operators? Compliance. First of all, operators have to stay current with the evolving rules. So it's important for us to at least read up on that. And this is an education process. That's really one of our fundamental pieces at NAPSO, is to try and educate on key issues. So this is a key storage issue. We're going to try and help educate on this issue. We're all going to make investments in repairing refrigeration or buying refrigeration equipment for those storages. So it's important for us to understand how to maximize those investments and maximize the economic return on those investments. We will be using new refrigerants. That's just the bottom line. We've changed refrigerants more than once in our careers, right? Some of us remember R12, others remember R22. Now we're on to others that are still HFCs, okay? And so they're going to have more greenhouse gas emissions. And really there's a thing called global warming potential they'll get into more on Thursday. But these low HFC or no HFC refrigerants, they have different global warming potentials. And so we've got rules that we follow within the refrigeration industry to try and help out in those scenarios. And training is always a key issue. Roles moving forward, it's important for us to engage and collaborate with regulators and tech providers. So it's important for us to reach out, like you said, with those letters. Get to your state representatives and senators, talk to them about trying to keep the states consistent with the federal law. And so we're going to try and help in those areas. Adopt and embrace the new technologies. I mean, we're not going to turn this train around. We all kind of said, can't we turn this train around? This train's well down the tracks, okay? Matter of fact, like I said, we cannot purchase any equipment that uses an A1 refrigerant right now from a manufacturer. So we can purchase for replacement compressors, for replacement evaporator units, but you cannot purchase entire systems that are using A1 refrigerants anymore. So we're on the new track. So when you're on a new track, you can complain about it, you can figure out how to make it work better, right? So we're going to work together as a group to make sure this thing goes forward the way we can make it work. We're going to advocate for the realities that are represented. We're not going to try and paint some picture that doesn't exist or worse than it is. There's a reality, and we're going to advocate to try and make it as good as we can, educate and help one another come to the table with real facts, not with some skeleton in the closet shaking issue, right? This is just what's happening. And then really represent and bring our concerns to legislators and others to make sure they understand the impact that these things have. Again, you can hit this QR code. There's 2 fact sheets on the AIM website that you can get through this QR code. They will help you out in trying to understand further, just kind of the high level. And then I'd also encourage you to talk to the suppliers that you're currently using. Every one of them is trying to come up to speed on the same issue, and they're all going to do a great job for you moving forward. So I appreciate you again taking the time today and allowing us to use it, Steve, and 4GROUP. And Victoria, have you got anything to add?
Just to let you know, our panel discussion on going further into in-depth with us, Ben Ingalls, Christy Steffen, and yeah, it's not on the slide. So my apologies. And Carl Hoverson will be there as a panel to talk more in depth, ask a few more in-depth questions, and that will be at 11:30 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday, on the Harvest stage. So we hope you can join us for that. We know refrigerated storage is an important part of the entire marketing season, and this AIM Act will definitely have an impact on investment decisions, storage decisions moving forward. So we really hope that we can give you the facts and the information, as Todd said, and prepare you for the future as best we can.
Thanks again, everyone. Have a great expo.
And thank you, Steve, again, and 4GROUP.